All right, welcome back to another episode of the Sports Down Podcast. I'm told, James, that this is our 21st podcast, which means we're now legally old enough to drink. So good job, man. We made it this far.
I didn't even bring any bubbly for the occasion, man. So somebody's gonna have to raise a toast for us afterward.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that a little bit later. Once Matt turns off the cameras, we'll have some fun. But as always, I'm Will Weber, sports editor for the New Mexican. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, James Barron, who won a national award, supposed to be getting it, next week in North Carolina?
Last Saturday.
Last Saturday. How was the award ceremony while you were at home in Albuquerque? What was that about?
Oh, it was great, man. It moved by so fast, I don't even remember what anybody said.
Yeah, I went to that thing last year, and my highlight of the whole thing, so, of course, it's like a 4-day event. And they have symposiums and, casual hours where everyone gets together and drinks and stuff. But I took Sarah out there, my wife, and we just treated it as a vacation. So instead of doing all that stuff, we went to Raleigh. We went to Cameron Indoor Stadium. We went to check out, the giant museum inside the Dean Dome in Chapel Hill. So it was cool. So after one of these days where we went and saw everything, we went back to the resort, which is in Greensboro, North Carolina. It's just an amazing resort. And we're coming off the elevator, and Joe Buck is standing right there, and he goes, "Hi, I'm Joe Buck." It's like, yeah, I know. I'm familiar with your work. So it was just like one of those holy crap moments. And then at the end of the ceremony, which we'll get to our guest here in a second, and he knows what I'm talking about. Scott Galletti was the broadcaster of the year. I was the writer of the year. And I was so grateful I was not at the same table as Scott, because I wanted to listen to the speeches, because we both we know who Scott is. But at the end of it, I don't want to hang around for the afterglow stuff. So my wife and I go back to our hotel room, immediately dressed. I can't stand wearing a suit and tie, and so I get in a pair of gym shorts and a t-shirt like I usually. That's my casual attire 98% of the time. I jump back in the elevator. Joe Buck's getting in there. He's already leaving town, and he's in sweatpants and a t-shirt, and he's like, "I effing hate dressing up for stuff like this." And I was like, "I know, same thing." And so this elevator ride down 7 flights or whatever it was, he talked about how much he hates dressing up. So that to me was the coolest part about it. And who knows, man? You could have been in the elevator with, what was it? Mike Tirico was the Hall of Fame inductee this year. I think you could have done that. So you missed out, Braun.
I know, man. My one and only chance to do it.
Yeah. Look, we have a special guest today, Ryan Tomari. Look, anyone who's been in sports journalism for any length of time in New Mexico knows exactly who this guy is, and it has nothing to do with him inventing and starting this. Really, we'll talk about the Pit Press Live, the podcast that he does, and then the Pit Press website, which is revolutionary in terms of its coverage for UNM. But we all know him, James, from his dust up with Mike Locksley,
he was the man that took down Locksley. It took him 2 years, but he finally did it.
That's right. So before we even get into any of this stuff, Ryan, we want to talk about Mike Locksley. How often do you two guys get together and have, drinks and share stories about the old days?
Where do you want me to start? I'm not a stand-up comedian. That wasn't a good for. I was in a bar with Jason Eck the other night, and he didn't threaten me and try to justify that he was a good head coach because he had a hot wife. And those were things that were said to me. Now I don't even remember the question. I feel like that Chappelle show kid. Yeah, it was a tragedy. Can you repeat the question?
Well, how did it start? The infamous night at the bar with Mike Locksley. How did that start? I think we all know how it started, but why don't you tell us?
It wasn't even at night. It was like in the afternoon, because I finally had a day off. So I wrote a column for the Daily Lobo. And that's what happens when you're a Mets fan. You're drinking at like 3:00 in the afternoon. I wrote a column at the Daily Lobo, and we published once a week during the summer. And I was an avid, thank God it's back, because that's all I spent the last year doing was playing college football 26. But the video game, like Madden, NCAA, what that year it was, NCAA 2011. For I don't remember what system, but UNM opened up at Oregon that year, and I play with my dad's and family and friends alma mater Rutgers, and I play with UNM. And I went to play the game at Oregon, and I played it on the hardest level, which is, if you're familiar with Madden, the hardest level on Madden is all Madden. The hardest level on NCAA is all Heisman. And when your team's not that good, it can be rough. So I played this game, and I got the ball on the opening drive. I remember this, and I went down and kicked a field goal, and I thought, oh, expletive. I'm up 3-0. And then I did like 10-minute quarters, and it was the half. And, you can do an accelerated clock with the play clock. And let me get to the point. I was down 41-3 at the half. And you're looking at the back-to-back 07-08 GameStop on Coors and Paseo Madden champion. Like I'm not good at a lot of things in my life. I take that with pride, and I still have the brackets. But anyway, I lost the game 72-3. I wrote a column I simulated the second half. I wrote a column in the Daily Lobo. It got published, and I wrote that the program was, quote, in shambles. Well, Locksley got wind of it, and my buddy and I ran into him at ABQ Uptown Sports Bar, and I saw him from across the room, and he started giving me a hard time. It was no fisticuffs, obviously. I'm not a fighter. But he just started giving me, a hard time about what I wrote, and that nobody was defending him in town, and I was one of the defenders. And he kind of irritated me, and it turned into this whole public records act with the media in town. And lo and behold, a month later, that was like the end of July, beginning of August. Lo and behold, a month later, they go to Oregon. They're down 59-0 at half and lose 72-0. So I spotted them 3 points. And that is the 2010 Oregon Ducks team that lost to a field goal to Cam Newton and Auburn's team in the national title game. Yeah. I'm sorry for that ramble, but that's the story. That's like a quick version of that story.
That's a great villain origin story right there. Man, that's an all-time.
Yeah, I know. And how prescient of you.
Is he the villain, or am I the villain in that? Because I have no idea anymore.
I think he turned out to be the villain. Yeah.
I think we learned that you're a better coach than Mike Locksley just from NCAA football 2011. You got 3. He got nothing.
Yeah, that's true. I remember one of my mentors in this town shooting me a text and saying, "Hey, you spotted him 3 points in the game."
Yeah. And Mike Locksley, he was true. He said they'd eat a triple digit on that scoreboard. They almost got one that game. So,
Oregon laid off they hit the brakes in that game.
Now, have you had any interaction with him since then?
I have. And Will, you've gotten to know me, and I think James, you know me a little bit. I do have a sense of humor. And look, I'm not going down that rabbit hole. I mentioned it off the record. Look, my dad passed away. You'll see where I'm getting with this. My dad passed away when I was 16. He got sick. He passed. So it's a rough subject for me, And even though 21 years later, when his son died and I was living in New Jersey, I shot him an email over. And I know this is kind of doing the homicide to the squirrel on the jet skis, but I wanted to write him a note for all the stuff that we had been through. And our friend Isaac Avaluse, I wrote him a quick note at his Alabama email address, and he responded and he said thank you. Then I moved back to Albuquerque and got back in the media, and he blocked me on Twitter. So go figure.
Old habits die hard, man. Come on.
Yeah. Well, look, moving on to current day, when did you started the Pit Press? Just talk about the origin of the Pit Press and the Pit Press Live, the podcast, which are both doing really well. You're starting to make waves. I think just like anything else, it starts slowly and people are kind of reluctant to jump on, but now you've kind of established yourself. When did you start this? Why did you start it? And how did you do it?
Well, I'm a big, and I'll start with this. I'm a big Jim Rome guy. So I had always just wanted to be behind a microphone, not necessarily in front of a camera. And I'm not a stand-up comedian, but I cannot go a day in my life without a Homer Simpson or South Park or Ghostbusters quip. Like, I just can't. I moved back and to Albuquerque right before the pandemic, and I worked for KOAT. They didn't have a sports section. That kind of rubbed me the wrong way, even though, I have other passions besides that. My degree from UNM says history, so I'm still learning about. I'm that guy. I wrote my thesis, chose to write my thesis at UNM to finish my degree on history. I don't know anything. I know a lot about the war in the Pacific. I take time to learn more about them in North Africa because I didn't know much about it. Those are my things. But and trying to write like terrible screenplays. I've got one in the works. But I moved back and I was trying to break back into the media and it just wasn't working for me. I had a pay to play position at 610, the sports animal. Jeff and JJ are my guys. I love it. I was excited to be on that station with Jim Rome. That's where it comes full circle. I did apply for Sean Ryder's position. I didn't get it, and probably for good cause. And I think, and I will say this, I'm a straight shooter. I think Sean does a fantastic job at the Journal, covering Lobo football as his beat. I know I'm on the Santa Fe, New Mexican podcast, but I'm just saying, I want to give him credit where credit's due because, I'm Will and James. I know you guys are heavy in northern New Mexico sports, but anyway,
he might be an all right dude, but he never comes out to play basketball with us, so that's a definite demerit against him.
That is a big demerit. I don't go and play because I'm terrible at basketball. Anyway, yeah. So I just wanted to continue. I lost the show at 610 and got a pretty good full-time day job, and I still wanted to be part of the media in this town. So spared no expense, and I went out on a credit card and bought a mixer, audio mixer. I bought this equipment. I've redone this room over 2 years. And I started out just as a podcast talking about national stuff, but that's still that journalist in me. I still wanted to get people on to talk about various subjects. And because I'm in Albuquerque, focus on UNM. I'm a big college football and college basketball fan. That's where it resonates. And my business partner, Eric Malton, who I had met a decade ago, came to me and just said, and it wasn't a knock on anybody. He just thought that the coverage of UNM could have been better. So I knew nothing about live streaming. I knew nothing about going live on social media platforms. And Eric's been the marketing genius behind that. I have written for our website, and I'll explain that. But we just started out as a podcast with like 50 listeners. And then about a year ago, when UNM made it back to the NCAA tournament, I was like, let's just try to go live. And we did on YouTube and X, and we've been going live ever since on those platforms. And it's been quite a journey turning and being viewed by UNM as a news outlet. And I guess that's what we are now. But that's our journey. But we're also trying to give you coverage where it's a pod, you can go back and listen. You can watch us live. And when we've had the Eric Olins on of the world, the Jason X of the world, some of the players, some of the coaches, I think for a niche that is UNM in a market like Albuquerque, some of our numbers, I'm like, and I'm glass half empty kind of guy. I was like, wow. And Eric's done a good job promoting us. And the guests have been phenomenal. I'm trying to do more written coverage. I know this is probably not, timely, but Ed Nunez, his son, who joins us, who's play-by-play for ProView, who is phenomenal at play-by-play, and he's better at being on the show than I am at hosting this own show that we do. He's an attorney by day, and he's been writing about the House settlement. I don't think you're getting that coverage elsewhere. And he's, I don't want to call him a lawman because he's not a cop, but he's Steven Seagal lawman. Like he's knowledgeable about it and he knows that stuff. I'm trying to give more written coverage. It's my background. And, I've just said, this is talking with my business partner, Eric, this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to be traveling with the UNM football team this fall. I will be in Ann Arbor, Pasadena, Boise, Vegas, at Allegiant Stadium. I'm excited about that. San Jose State. I'll be at Air Force, which I've seen games at. It's fantastic. That was just a dream of mine to cover college football nationally. But we've just kind of grown to where we're live. You can chime in on YouTube, on the artist formerly known as Twitter, X, and Facebook, and you can read us. And we've brought in a mentor of mine, Greg Archuleta, to write for us. So we're expanding. I know that was a long-winded answer. I'm really sorry about that, but you can find us in written form. You can find us video, and we've got in podcasts. You can listen to it just audio, and we've tried to expand, where you just get stories and clips on TikTok, which I know nothing about, and YouTube. So I don't know. I never thought as a newspaper guy I would be sitting behind a camera streaming on Twitter, but here I am. And I think it's, to finish that up, it's a mix of my background in journalism and marketing and advertising from Eric. And Eric and I have kind of turned into brothers, but I mean, everything you see behind the scenes is this logo is him. And I really mean this. I'm just not saying it on here. I'm a calls it as I sees it guy, which I've said a lot lately, but I owe a lot of this to Eric, and I'm living a dream. So with that long, incoherent ramble, which I hope we're not all idiotic for, there you go.
By the way, you're not giving enough credit to Eric, man. By the way, I mean, just for the Northern New Mexico fans, that's a 2005 Capital graduate there. Was a great good basketball player, hell of a baseball player too.
Mm-hmm. And you see, and I feel really stupid by this. I mean, he's like on holy ground up there with that Capital team. I did not know that until Ed Nunez joined us. I was like, holy moly.
His whole family. His dad was athletic director.
His dad was the athletic director. His brother played, but everybody talks about that 03-04 Capital team. Like it. I mean, I think I did a top 10 when we did our top 10s, and I think I named them the number one team of the first quarter century in Northern New Mexico.
And Mike Dominguez was on that team, correct?
Yeah. And then if you know the history of Capital High School, they have not done well in a lot of stuff. So it would be like the Lobo basketball team making it to the Final Four, just winning the national championship, and then doing nothing else since then in every single sport. So they're highly regarded. And some of your other talent there, I've told you this just in conversation, Ryan, but Nick Nunez, I covered the Class 3A baseball state tournament just a month or two ago, and I listened to him call 2 games for the ProView networks or whatever it is, the NFHS website, and he was phenomenal. Just an outstanding play-by-play guy. Just the way he carried the entire broadcast by himself was really talented guy, great voice, great delivery. And then Greg Archuleta. James and I go way back with Cos. I sat in the same newsroom as Cosmo for 14 years at the Albuquerque Journal. Exceptional writer, just one of the best journalists I've ever worked with. So yeah, you're like your Mets. You've been spending some money in the free agent market. You got some guys coming in.
Well, I would think bringing Greg Archuleta on won't mean we won't drop 13 of 15, but that's another story, for another time.
He's the Juan Soto of the free agent pickups for you.
But he might actually get an extra base hit for once,
We talk about all these guys, but we'll kind of drop the ball on the one guy that's kind of been also a mainstay, and that's Big Ed, man.
Oh, Ed Nunez.
Yeah. I didn't mention him, and I figured you guys would, and I feel bad it wasn't nothing on him. When Eric and I started this, he was the first guy I called up and said, "Hey, do you want to join us on our podcast?" When we had no video, no nothing. And he was like, yeah. So he's been with us from the beginning. My buddy Rick Thompson joined us. He left. But Ed's been, and then Jacob Neff, and I'll talk about him briefly. My buddy Jacob. Ed's been, Ed's one of the best things I love about Ed is he's got my back, and I really appreciate that. And he seems like kind of Mayor McCheese where everybody knows him. So I'm happy to have him on, and I love that it's not like diminishing him. I'm glad we have somebody a little bit older who saw like the 70s Lobos play, the 80s Lobos team play, because while I love history, you can't live, I didn't live it. And for him to kind of bring that insight, and we started a Lobo Legend series where we brought on guys that at least, I was able to watch. We've had Clayton Shields on. One of the best interviews I've ever had, Lamont Long. You can go to our YouTube channel and find the conversation with Lamont Long. He was very straight to the point about a lot of things, including Dave Bliss, but how good those teams were. But Ed, we've had David Quixote on. I was lucky enough to meet a lot of the guys that played for Alford because my friend Mike Mottes was a manager. I'm not saying they're my best friends, but I know the Daniel Ferrises of the world. I know the Roman Martinezes of the world. I know the Doris Carys of the world. They're great guys. And Phil McDonald now. I was talking to Phil regularly during the basketball season. Then we got busy. I need to pick him up and give him a call. But Ed's been great at getting all those other guys. We had who did we have? The names are escaping me, and I can see their faces. But we've had guys that played in the 70s and 80s on, and I thought it was Marvin Johnson we had on. So for him to bring that element. And I love history. We're covering that element too. So again, I didn't think this is where we would be 2.5 years later. But yeah, kudos, Dad. I love having Ed on, and he's kind of been, if I say, hey, we're doing a show, he's like, I'm hopping on with you. And I'm like, great. At least, we can bounce stuff, back off each other. And I don't look like an idiot hosting by myself. But Ed's been with us from the beginning. And I was telling him and Nick, from an industry where maybe you don't, you're doing it for whatever kind of paycheck for pennies or whatever. I said, occasionally it's nice to hear you're appreciated. And I told this to them. I know it's not a paycheck, and we've been able to monetarily help these guys too. Not that they need it, but to show them for their efforts. I told Nick, I was like, man, I can't, like 3 or 4 times with all this house settlement stuff. I'm like, I can't thank you enough. And Ed joining me, I can't thank you enough. So I've been really appreciative of him, and we all get along. I mean, so it's fun to do. Everybody wants to talk college football, college basketball, or UNM athletics.
Yeah, the face of media has really changed over the years. There used to be a number of newspapers, radio stations, and just local outlets who covered. It was a traditional TV, radio, newspaper market. And just probably in the last 10 years, you've seen a great diminish of all that. But you got bloggers, you got people like you who do video podcasts, people who just write for their own website, come and go. But you're one of these entities that's managed to stick, and not just stick, but grow. I'll share the story with you. And I were both in Cleveland for the NCAA tournament a couple months ago, and the sports information director for UNM, he's a tough sell. You gotta. That's a tough nut to crack, Frank Mercogliano. And when you stepped out of the room, we're in the media set. They're in the media area. You stepped out for a second, and he was gushing about your website, your site, your work ethic. He said, you know what? He puts his money where his mouth is. He shows up and he's out here. And I'm like, well, Frank, I've been doing this for 28 years. You've never once given me a compliment. So you've done something. I don't know how much you paid this guy under the table, but Frank Mercogliano was a big fan of yours.
No, definitely not paying him under the table. You should see how I bet on sports. I don't know if you were going to add something to that, Will. I'm sorry to cut you off. I have to say this to you, and I'm a rambler. I jokingly call myself Ryan Rambler. I would like to say a majority of the guys in the media in this town, I absolutely look up to and love. And Will, I knew you, and I think our friendship has evolved a little bit more over the last, 6 months. And again, I'm not coming on this podcast to stroke egos. And James, you've come on our show to talk with Ed and Nick about Northern New Mexico hoops, I think. And I'm appreciative of you, Will. I mean, seriously, I really am. I enjoyed talking to you in Cleveland, and James, it's always a pleasure. Seriously. But for Frank and it was it's one of those things where my jaw hit the floor when you told me that. Because I think there was thought that I was just doing it to talk negative about UNM. Now, I don't care, but some of those wounds have healed since the Mike Locksley days, because I was mad. And I like to remind people, I understand I was a journalist, but my mom paid for me to go to school there, and you had Locksley walking in, yelling at me. That's where I've taken, that's over the years, that's where I thought that really irked me. I was a student of that university. I don't think if you've ever wanted to see in anything aspect of life your fruitions of hard work, this is it. And it's not the Bud Light jersey, the Bud Light sweatshirt, or my framed North Star Ledger and Daily News and posts from the day after, 2 days after, or each day after the Giants last won their Super Bowls. And then some of I have a picture of Jimmer Fredette when UNM won back there. I framed a couple of my articles, but it's the fruitions of hard work, which I never thought, or labors of hard. I don't know. That's the St. Pius education going down the drain, not the UNM. I'm grateful for it. I never in a million years thought I would have been sitting when I bought my buddy Steven, and he doesn't work for us, but he was on spring break, and he's like, F it, I'm going to Cleveland. And I was like, well, I know I'm credentialed, so if you can just spot me the hotel room for the days, I'll pay you back. And that's what happened. And we were on a plane sitting at Spectators bar on Sunday night watching the selection show. He booked the hotel room. We booked our flights. And Wednesday morning, I was boarding a plane to Cleveland, and I could not believe it. And for the access, and for me to pick up the phone, and for Steve Kirkland to be amazing, and for Frank Mercogliano, this is on the record, Will, from Frank Mercogliano to be great. I'm like, we've come a long way, and my big stink is it's a public university. A lot of people have gone to school there. You're on a national stage. Now I know you weren't big, the football's a different story, but you were one of 32 teams left in college men's basketball this year. Um, I think people want to know, local people want to hear from you. You sell out a stadium 15,000. That doesn't happen in college basketball, really. So I hope this answered a question or comment. I would have not thought we've been where we are, and bringing it full circle with my mom paying for me to go to UNM, at least she's getting some money's worth of her degree, my degree now. But I just think for me and my coworker, Isaac Avalusea, back at the Daily Lobo, who's on to bigger and better things than I could have ever imagined. Well, no, I can. I think I've gained, and it's not, I wasn't doing it for that, but I don't think I have an ego. I try not to have an ego. I try to have more of a sense of humor or no arrogance. But I think I've gone on Kurt Ross show. I've had other outlets regionally ask me to come on, and you guys asked me to come. I was like, hell yeah. So I think I've finally gotten, we are respected as some journalists and some guys who have some insight. And Nick Nunez writing about house settlement while I intro our show with fart and Vagisil jokes like South Park. But I'm happy, so much for the respect there. But we've come a long way, and I'm very happy to be where we're at. And I'm rambling again. I'm sorry. It was a lot of hard work. So to get respect from UNM and for him to call us a news outlet was amazing.
Yeah, it's not easy to get respect from him, man. Sometimes I'm glad when I get a high.
Right. Yeah.
So I saw him at the airport leaving for Mountain West Conference Media Days last week. Ed and I were sitting at a coffee table, and he walked like out of the bathroom, and damn it, I went, "Hi, Frank." I yelled at him. I made sure. And I hope this joke doesn't go a long way, because I don't like flying. And I thought if this plane blows up, I was looking right at the back of Frank Mercogliano's head. And I was like, I hope we make it to Vegas. Okay. Cause that's not the last image I want to see, but Frank's been really helpful, and Steve's been really helpful.
Yeah. The media days have come and gone. Is that correct?
No, we will be out there in 2 weeks, and fabulous.
17th, right?
Yeah, 16th and 17th. We will be out there this year. We've gone from me going 2 years ago to Ed and I going last year to 5 of us going this year.
Dang.
Eric's going to show up and be our visual guy. I am going to act as a beat reporter. Ed and Nick are going to try to talk to people and act like excuse me, I lost my train of thought because I got a text from my mom. Nick and Ed are going to try to be.
Look at that.
I stop what I'm doing when she texts.
You had the rainbow pinwheel going on.
Yeah, no, I did. Where were the? Sorry about that. I feel like an idiot. That's all the years of alcohol catching up to me. Nick and Ed are going to be hosting. Jacob's a liaison. He's got a lineage of my buddy Jacob Neff, who joins us too. His uncle oversaw the sports book at the Mirage. Like I can ask him right when the Eagles beat the Commanders and it was still Chiefs Bills. I said, "Hey, who's going to be favored in the Super Bowl?" He goes, "Regardless, it's going to be a point." I'll be damned, the Chiefs won, and he was like, "It's going to be a point." Like, he's got that kind of knowledge. So we've got a good team going out there. But yeah, from me going from one guy 2 years ago to not knowing what we were doing, there. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Way to rub that one in there, Ryan.
I'm sorry.
You're talking about Commanders.
I'm being PC. I still liked Washington football team, for the record.
I still like this one. This one was really good.
Doug Williams, Timmy Smith, Hobbs, right?
I tell you, the only time I've ever been nervous to meet any sports entity in my life was when Joe Theismann was the guest speaker at the New Mexico Bowl.
Do you
go shake his hand? I was trembling. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is my childhood hero." If you could only have brought Art Monk with you, and Darryl Green and Dexter Manley and all those other guys, John Riggins. So
would you like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon here?
Yeah.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Joe Theismann, not Theismann. Theismann from South River High School. He graduated high school with my dad. Do you know who he threw the ball to his, I think, junior and senior year?
Yeah.
Drew Pearson.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this little high school in Central Jersey, my mom graduated with Drew Pearson when I was a year older than him, but my dad graduated with Thiesman, and I believe my cousin Charlotte went to senior prom. My dad's age went to senior prom with him. So there you go. There you go, Will.
So you should
Wow.
be a Washington Redskins fan. That's
No,
what I'm
Yeah,
there's
so
only
you should be.
there's only one team, and they all have NY, and it stands for next year on it.
Let me ask you about your like you're changing the way UNM is being covered. I know the news outlets here in town can cover them on a regular basis, and that's what we get paid to do. But that's essentially become your focus moving forward. Is this kind of an arms race where, like, just to maybe give people here some element that they've never had before, because not only can you do the visual stuff, but you can do the writing part of it, and just kind of rubbing elbows. I don't know. It seems to me like I've always prided myself, and I know James the same way. When we're covering an entity, we try not to get too close to them, because if we're like back in the day when Capitals basketball team was so good, that's where James got his nickname, Jaguar
Yeah.
James. Remember
Pretty
that?
much.
And if you get
Yeah.
too close to a team, you
I
almost
got
feel
invited
kind
to
of
the
weird about
sleepovers, so
it. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I've never had that problem. So, but do you feel like there's ever a point where you don't want to get too chummy with these people?
Yeah, I've let it be known to Eric, and Eric has made it known, which I'm glad he agrees with me, is we are still an independent outlet. I am not, and I'm not just saying this on here. We are not affiliated with the University of New Mexico or the University of New Mexico athletic department. Um, it's political, and you both know this. Um,
mhm.
I I still think it's we had Jason Eck on Friday. I don't want to harass him. Like, I'm not a fanboy. I thanked him twice. I let him eat dinner with his family. His wife was out of town, so he was like a guy. He's like, oh, I got to watch the kids. Do they have a kids menu? And can kids come into this brewery? Like, it was kind of cool to hear that. Like, oh, he's like us. Um, but you know, I don't. I think it's true. You keep your friends closer and you keep your enemies closer. Um, I won't, and that's the beauty of the conversation Arch and I had when I asked him to come along for this ride. He was like, "Are you okay with me being critical of UNM?" And I was like, "Yeah, because there's checks and balances in this country." And I think that he, by adding his element, if he's got to call it UNM, he's got to call him out. Like and I've done a 180 because, as I've said, I calls it as I sees it. I was and it's maybe based on the fact of the access we have. And I was not a Bronco Mendenhall fan. Patino was kind of reserved and towards the end there. And it's like, I know you're on John Rothstein. Why can't you give us 15 minutes? That's my point. But no, I think it's like keeping to answer that question. I would like to have a happy, healthy relationship with Frank and with Steve, and I still want Fernando and Barry. I've known Ryan Berryman for some time now. I would still like these guys to be a guest, but at the same time, I think they have to understand. I've already mentioned it. We've got somebody like a Nick Nunez who's a lawyer on our show and understands more of this with the house settlement stuff. And I think it's important that they know, and it goes over my head and he's dissecting it. It's, I don't know. It's almost like walking a thin red line maybe, but I would like to have a happy, healthy relationship at arm's length maybe, but they need to know that our primary focus is what we do is I want to cover UNM athletics, and that's really our bread and butter. Now, Nick and Ed talk high school sports, which I think is cool. It adds another element. I know Jacob and I have done gambling, and I've talked about bringing on another buddy of mine to do a gambling show like for the fall and football. Um, that's our focus. I just think it's like walking a thin line, and I'm saying it again. I can't thank what Frank and Steve of that department has done lately. So I hope that answered your question too.
Mm.
Hey,
Hey,
Ryan,
I'm
do you
just
think?
happy to have a parking pass when we show up.
Yeah.
Mm.
Hey, Ryan, do you think part of the appeal, especially of your live shows, is the fact that it's, while there is structure within it, it's rather unstructured and kind of has a free form to it, and you guys can go like 90 minutes, 2 hours, and I think you keep people engaged even throughout that. I think I saw you guys during the the tournament selection after they had announced the field and everything, and I know Will was on there for a little bit, but I mean, you guys had like a 90-minute, but almost 2 hour exchange just about that. And it seems to me part of the appeal is that you kind of give that, I don't know if I want to say old time sports talk type of format that maybe is missing here, but you guys really dig deep into the weeds on some of this stuff.
Well, it's funny because I'm not the X's and O's guy, and I say that a lot on our show. Um, Ed, Eric, and Nick won a state title. And Eric won a state title in basketball. My buddy Rick, when he joined us, was a two-time offensive state lineman for the one, the only San Juan Mendoza. So I love Coach Mendoza. I haven't talked to him in some time, but I didn't play. But as we've gotten older, he's the best. Yeah, I've tried to treat it like that, and I think it's. And Greg and I were talking about writing the other day. I think maybe it's as long as it needs to be. But I think after they won the Mountain West, we did do a show the Sunday the Sunday before the tournament, like in between the conference tournaments and the regular season, and we had Rocco Miller on. Rocco Miller is a bracketologist, and he's like on with the field of 68 guys. I mean, I know when you think of that in the world, it's the Lenardis and maybe the Jerry Palms, but like people know Rocco Miller, and he's responsible for putting games together and stuff, and that's what he does during the season. Um, Coach Tom Moser, who's a guy who has started his own podcast and is a coach in Delaware and blew up because he loved Mountain West basketball. Love having him on, and I've bugged. Excuse me, I've bugged. Guys who've Sean Harrison at the Logan Herald Journal and Jason Turner there are great friends. I mean, that's what what I see on Dan Patrick and the National So's Lebitard in Rome. Um, I just don't want to get on and spew BS out of my mouth for 3 hours. Like the way I've seen it, and I've built up relationships with a lot of these people is you're there, you cover the team, why not join us? And a lot of people have been cool. So I think that's the traditional aspect of it. But it is cool because if I can get a guest like tonight, I know this probably isn't timely, but tonight, we've got a lawyer from Boise State who's a professor talking about house settlement. Then I always go to Nick Coppola from the Las Cruces Sun News just to kind of chime in on New Mexico State. Keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. So yeah, I think it's traditional like that. But if we want to do like, if I have a day job, if I've had a long day of work and we can get two guests in for an hour, we'll call it a night. And then during the summer, I try to keep it consistent. I think it's a mix of both, James, and I hope that answers your question there because um, it's cool because I've tried to keep it laid back and lax. Now I've had people say, "Well, you're not prepared." Well, it's like I kind of started it to just be like a fan forum, um, and then have guests and questions ready for those guests. But I think it's a mix of both, um, and the flexibility is cool, and I don't have to abide by the FCC or anything like that. So, um, if I'd like to say a curse word, I can.
I don't
Oh,
know
you're
if
not afraid to do that too. So
yeah, I don't know if we've
No,
ever
I'm
done that
not.
on this show. Maybe,
I have to watch myself.
yeah,
It's like being
oh,
we've all
Ryan came close there.
we've
yeah.
been
Ryan
real
came close
close.
there about 5 minutes ago. So
Sorry.
not that we're counting. We don't have like a swear jar or anything where you have to drop like 30 in it.
What are your like the Mountain West is falling apart? They got 1 year left of the party, and then it's just completely different. But you've talked to a lot of people. I'm curious, what's your opinion on the Mountain West and what lies ahead for UNM? Because they're in some ways UNM's coming off one of its best years ever. The Learfield Sports Cup, they were the top team in the Mountain West, one of the top teams in really top 50 in terms of points in the country. Whereas some of the other schools that boast to have a really strong athletic program we're nowhere near them in that area. But what's the future for UNM? What's the future for the Mountain West?
Well, I have to start with the Pac-12 because everybody's like, we're going to the Conference of Champions. Well, last time I checked, and I'm not saying this as a UNM alumni, I would be saying this as a graduate of Rutgers living in New Jersey, if that were the case. When I think of the Pac-8, Pac-10, Pac-12, I think about UCLA in the tournament. I think about USC and Washington in the Rose Bowl. I think about Oregon in the Rose Bowl. Not Fresno State, not Utah State, and it's not a knock on them. And I like all college athletics. Like, I'd love to go a game in Pullman. I'd love to go to a game in Corvallis. I'm trying to draw a thin line, but this is not the Pac-12. This is the Mountain West with a slight flex. And I don't think anybody cares really about that Learfield Cup because UNM can't win at football. I don't have to say it. We all know that football carries the weight. And when you have 2,000 people in that stadium, that's why they are left behind, I think. I think if they had any inclination of a 6-6 season or a 5-7 seasons or a 9-4 season that wasn't 18 years ago, I think they would be in the Pac-12 because it is nice to see the other schools. Excuse me. I haven't slept well either lately. It's been nice to see those other programs do well. I mean, look at track and field. Women's basketball has had its ups and downs the last couple years, but they're still competing in the Mountain West. But I think they're left behind because football has not carried any weight, and I don't know if Lobo fan fully understands that. And I don't think if you're a New Mexican and you haven't traveled much, I don't think you understand what it's like to have a game day, even at Fresno or Boise, or when you go to the South, and what those 8 home games, 6, 7, 8 home games mean. I don't know. It's lost in translation. And then you hear about people complaining about, oh, it took me 15 minutes to get out of the parking lot at the pit. Go see the Jets or Giants play. You'll get out at 11 p.m. and you'll be home at 3 a.m. Have fun with that. Like, it's, that's just, I hope that all made sense again, but that's how I feel. Like, I understand why UNM was left behind. As good as the basketball team was, it's football, man.
But what were they left behind? In your opinion, is the Pac-12 an upgrade over what's there now?
No, I think they should combine. I don't, and I'm not, I have to preface this. I don't think it's there. I don't think the Pac-12 is an upgrade with these teams. I purposely looked this up yesterday because I was like, when's the last time Washington State won a Rose Bowl? And I knew Oregon State had won a Rose Bowl. When was the last time? The last time Washington State, I think, was a Rose Bowl, we weren't even in World War I. And when Oregon State won a Rose Bowl, or whichever one it was, vice versa, we were still fighting the Japanese and the Germans. Like, there's I get Ryan Leaf. There's been no relevance with those two schools to where they think they're great. Oregon State pummeled Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl 25 years ago with guys who are retired. Like, it's, for them to be here and now, and they're back. Washington State took a nosedive with their basketball program. They were good 2 years ago. It wasn't this year. I think the Oregon State Elite Eight run was a shot in the pan, flash in the pan. I respect those schools, but when I think of them, I think of them with the U of A's. I think of them with the ASUs, and I'm showing my age with that. But again, I love history. This is the Conference of Champions to me is UCLA and USC. Jake the Snake Plummer the one year going to the Rose Bowl, 96, 97. Those are the things I think of. And I saw like a politician tweet out yesterday. It was like, welcome to the Conference of Champions. I'm like, no, this is not. I don't know. That's where I stand. I sound like a grumpy old man. Get off my lawn.
It's a Dollar Tree version of the Conference of Champions.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, it's a bunch of state schools, and I think, look, I know everyone likes to make fun of state schools, but when you have a whole conference full of them, it kind of feels weird.
Well, there's not that, I didn't even mention Stanford. Stanford has had success in basketball and football. They've had, Jim Plunkett comes to mind. Like, I don't know what I don't get it. And it's just like bragging, and the Oregon State people are happy. I think they would be better off combining. I really would, because then I think you kind of would, if Boise and Washington, hypothetically, if Boise and Washington State are knocking on the college football playoff door at the beginning of November, like Washington State was until they came down here, then if you have two teams vying for 10, 12 spots, I would say you're probably borderline power conference. I don't understand. I feel like people are missing the mark there. And I'm going to say it again. I'm not saying that because we cover UNM. That's just how I feel. It doesn't make sense to me.
Cosmo had a pretty good column, I thought, today, because I saw I was reading up on that a little bit, and he kind of hinted that I don't think he was trying to say that this is the UNM's last stand as far as football, but I mean, he makes a very good point. If Eck can't do it here, where did UNM go? Because I mean, every year this program stagnates, you're just that much further behind everybody else. And let's be honest, this program's been behind the rest of the country for the last 60 years, and you're not going to make it up in like 2.
Yeah. And sometimes I think about UNM in relations to other mid-majors. Like, what has the Eastern Michigan of the world done? And I'm not trying to single them out. Like, what have they done? Utah State.
They've done more than UNM.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, no more than UNM. What's FIU done? What's FAU done? And they're in the Conference USA. And I think it's funny because before my parents moved to Albuquerque, my dad was teaching electrical engineering at Wichita State, and they were there when they got rid of their football program, which with a nickname like the Shockers is a damn shame. But it's, I have a conversation with a family friend every Thanksgiving who despises American football. She's married to an Englishman. I don't understand why UNM gets rid of football. I'm like, they're in a conference with television money. They're given money to play in football in the conference, but it gets so hard to watch them get beat up, especially like during the Locksley years. It was just, I remember a lot of stories I wrote during the Daily Lobo days because it was a million years ago. But I remember one, like halfway through the 2010 season, I wrote, they had lost through 6 games. They lost an average of 41-17. Who wants to watch that? Mm-hmm. And I have to quote Jeff Symbieta, you need a reason to go to those games. You have a reason to go to the pit. I hope that if Eck does, if there's energy, I don't necessarily think he'd be the last coach. I mean, or one of the last, but I don't know. There's a real possibility about that because we had conversation on our show, like, well, if Bronco can't do it here, who the hell can? And at 5, looking back at last year, they could have easily been 9 I can't believe I'm saying this. They could have been 9-3 or 10-2.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the Montana State game should have happened. They should have won that game.
Wyoming.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my thought is, look, I wish I could actually write this in print because I could never get away with it. But my thought with UNM and football is piss or get off the pot. Look, it's been 90 years and you've never had a ranked team in the AP Top 25. It's time to either invest or just don't. Just give up. And I know everyone's like, just drop football or go down to FCS. You can't do that. You either drop football entirely and just disappear from really the conversation of a borderline mid-major. But if you drop football, you're paying the price for it. But the thing is, instead of addressing this wound, you keep putting a Band-Aid over it and hoping it gets better. It's not going to get better. You have to invest. And one of the profound things that Danny Gonzalez always said to us was the thing that gets people's attention, the thing that gets recruits' attention is progress. Orange barrels. If you have some sort of progress inside your stadium, it's people excited. If you throw a little bit of money in there, not talking to Ohio State or Michigan or Alabama money, but just do something to make the facility, to make the program better instead of this, let's just hit the very bottom line and try to keep it alive. This is the idea of keeping this thing on life support instead of trying to grow it is just annoying as all get out to me. And that to me, that's UNM's biggest problem. And there, I fixed UNM's problems. You can make me the athletic director. You can build a statue of me. Like I came up with a big idea. No one's ever thought of that ever. So good job.
Well, if I was athletic director, it would have been dollar beer night. Every home football game was dollar beer night.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't, no wristbands, no,
Yeah.
just hire Ubers and dollar beer night.
That's actually a good idea.
I think dollar bill night. I've been an advocate of them dropping to FCS because I like the FCS product. I like the FCS playoff. But I would like, what if they're like the number 1 seed and they have home field advantage up until Frisco? Like, are people, oh no, it's going to take us 20 minutes to get out of the parking lot. Are you going to go? It's fickle here. It's weird to me. People at other schools just go, people at other universities, they just show up. Christ, there's 10,000 people at college baseball games, and I like college baseball. I don't watch regular season games. I like the tournament, and I like to see at least who's winning. I think that people, and I don't know what it is. I think people don't understand that, but I've been a proponent of them dropping to FCS because I'd be very interested in seeing if they became that upper echelon, which I think they would have the ability to do, and play in, they're in the semifinal to go to Frisco. And I would wonder what that you're playing for a national championship. I wonder how many people would show up.
Probably
Well, I think people would show up. I think it kind of showed. I mean, when the soccer program was successful, people showed up to that, and I think that's what attracts a lot of fans to UNM athletics, and it's why basketball has been so successful, because they got a taste of it back in the '60s, and they've never lost it. And they've been fairly competitive for the most part, outside of like 4 or 5 year or 10-year periods. Thank you, Craig Neal. But other than that, they know what to expect, that this team's going to compete for conference titles and get NCAA tournament berths, and hopefully hit that last ceiling and get to the Sweet 16. I think that's pretty much what Lobo fans have been riding on, at least in basketball, for the last 50, 60 years. And in football, they've had nothing. It's like, why go to watch a 72-3 drubbing?
Yeah, no, it's true. I've talked to boosters and people that donate. It's like, well, I don't want to go watch them lose to Texas A&M 50-0. But when it comes to basketball, everybody's like, oh, Sweet 16 berth, Elite Eight. And I've been one who said, to quote, what's his character? Tom Berenger and I'll watch my language, but Tom Berenger in Major League, when they find out they're going to sell the team, well, it's win the whole thing, like win the whole expletive thing. Why not? Look at San Diego State. 15 minutes. They were giving UConn a hard time for 15. And I knew I didn't think they'd win that game, but I was like, this UConn team is good. They're going to throw up a punch, and it's going to be close. And then, I never thought it was in doubt with UConn with that game, but for sure, like that first 10 minutes or 15 minutes was intriguing.
Yeah.
And they're capable of doing it. Why not UNM?
Yep.
James, I like that you brought it full circle with the 72-3 thing. That's
yes. Why not?
That was my score, not UNM's.
Like I said, man, I'm giving you more credit than Locksley.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I miss Locksley, the correctable mistakes. That was his favorite thing to say. That's correctable mistake.
I sat next to Arch once. I sat next to Cosmo once and counted how many times he said corrected. I had a little notebook, and he said correct or corrected like 20 times in a 10-minute period. Yeah. None of those things got corrected.
Well, and Davey's thing was schematically. Yeah,
I've heard about. I wasn't there for those, but I've heard about that.
Yeah, those were interesting. Yeah,
but that just trips down memory lane.
Yeah. That was the best part about it. Is the Tuesday luncheons. You didn't go for the free food. You didn't go for the warm, inviting atmosphere. You went for the story time. Bob Davey took you down. You just got this nice fuzzy feeling inside. You just like, oh, tell me more stories about Texas A&M and Notre Dame, coach. And that was the best thing about Bob Davey, because the rest of it was hard to deal with. But
do you know the Walmart chicken story with the luncheons?
I do not.
No.
Okay. So during the Locksley era, Tucanos was a sponsor, and they had the Tucanos on the backdrop. And when Locksley, I forgot, I think it was the JB Gerald stuff when he punched him, and Tucanos was like, bye. And they still had the Tucanos logo, and they provided the luncheon. Well, they didn't show up because they pulled the sponsor. I will never forget Frank walking in with Walmart chicken for the media. for we went from Tucanos from Brazilian cuisine to Walmart fried chicken in the matter of a week. I will never forget that. He had
Not even
bags.
the
He
good
walked
fried
in.
chicken. He just got you the cheap fried one, huh?
I didn't even go to Popeyes. Like I would have,
Yeah.
I would have appreciated that, but I will never forget that story. I'm surprised I've never told that ever, but I will.
You'd be better off
forget
just bringing you the cookies from their bakery there instead of the
that.
chicken.
Yes.
In metaphorically speaking, they're still eating Walmart chicken. It's been that way ever since. Golly. Well, Ryan, it's been fun, man.
Yes, it has.
We've been talking.
I think I can't hear Will. FYI.
You can't. Uh-oh. Something's
Uh-oh.
broken.
No, that was me. That was me. Sorry.
Yeah. I thought you got another text from your mom and the rainbow people was going off.
No, it wasn't another text with like, I can't log into my Outlook. I'm like, what do you know that your own password? Sorry, I hit a button on my end. That was my fault. I didn't hear what you said.
Well, going forward, we're gonna have your the legend on here, Eric Moulton. At some
Yes, we will.
Eric saved our bacon one time at the Lobo football scrimmage where he while I walked in and Katy Perry was playing on the loudspeaker. It gave me inspiration for a lead for my story. I was very inspired by that. But yeah, Eric was there as he served as my photographer. Just saved our bacon. Just got us some really good pictures before deadline, no less. And so I owe him one. That's the least I could do. Maybe I'll bring him some Walmart chicken next time.
Get him buy him a Katy Perry compact disc.
Katy Perry.
Yeah, vinyl. I think Eric will not ramble like I am, not have a terrible sense of humor like I am, probably won't get texts from his mom like I do during this. I'm sure he'd be great to talk to. I told him today, like, we've been asked to do a few of these now, and it's just me, and I'm like, I think you can do them because one, you play now with you guys. He should definitely come on with that Capital team. But
yeah.
God, that'd be James. It'd be a James Barron and Moulton podcast. You two would just go. I would sit in the corner reading a book or something. That's
to break out your reading glasses and everything, and just look bored.
Well, I'll tell you what. Tomorrow we got to get you up to Santa Fe. Watch a Pecos League game. I know we talked.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah, I would love that.
You haven't lived.
I really would.
You can sit through the NCAA tournament in Cleveland. You can go to a packed house in the pit. But you have not lived until you've been to Fort Marcy Ballpark in front of 200 of your closest friends watching a Pecos League game that takes 4.5 hours, like last night's game.
Yes,
it was
where
they gave up 7 runs in the ninth.
They gave up 7 runs in the ninth.
Yeah,
blew a 13-7 lead.
I worked for Steve Hurlburt I helped him out for a couple months at the Isotopes, and towards the end, they were down. This is the Dodgers' heyday, like starting that heyday. Mm-hmm. And they were beating somebody. They were losing like 9-1, and it went into the ninth, and it was like a 50-minute ninth inning, and they tied the game, and it went to 11. It went to extra innings. I feel your pain. It's one of those things you'll never forget. I don't miss and I love baseball. I don't miss the 4.5-hour games. Dear Lord.
Well, the worst part is when you have to write that stuff up, man. I'm sitting there waiting for the final out, and it took them like 45 minutes before I finally was able to send it.
Yeah, and that's every night, 4.5-hour games, every single night.
So. Well, Fort Marcy Park has move over Rose Bowl. I'm ready to go.
Right.
Yeah. We might even let you take a few swings at that right field port. They say it's 301, but it's more like 180.
Oh,
they should let me get an at bat. I was a pretty decent leadoff guy, so let me see. It's been 20 years.
They'll throw you out there.
Oh, I'll try out with my gut and the most disproportionate skinny fat guy you'll ever meet.
I don't know, man. Gene's dad was pretty disproportionate.
Gene.
Yeah, I'm just talking about Will was it Gene dad, was it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Gene dad.
The Gene's guy. Yeah. Gosh, that's one of my most memorable Fuego moments. I was out at a game. Actually, it was the night that James wrote a story about the turquoise tower, the net out in right field, and I just was kind of walking through the bullpen area, and they had a guy come out of the stands wearing dad jeans and a salmon-colored T-shirt, and he's throwing a bullpen session as a tryout. And the guy that's catching him, he threw 7 pitches, by the way, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gassed." And they're like, "Well, if it works out, you'll be our starting pitcher tomorrow." He was not the starting pitcher the next day, but his first pitch, and I got a video of this, and I sent it to James while it was happening. He almost hit me with his first pitch because I was standing off to the side behind a chain link fence. I was like, "Man, if this guy can do it, I am definitely coming out here tomorrow. I'm coming out here, and I'm going to give it my best shot." So pulling people out of the stands wearing dad jeans.
So there's hope for you, Ryan. Just remember that.
there's
There's hope.
I'm a pullover basketball shorts guy now. So I've worn a 3-piece suit in Manhattan in August in the pouring rain, and I'd be more than happy to. I'd be ready to go. At least I'd be in loose clothing wear than
There you go.
than Jad jeans.
Well, look, I think we just set the record for the longest podcast ever. I think we're closing in on an hour.
We're getting close.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, it's awesome. We finally had a talkative guest. We've had some bad ones on here.
Yeah, we've had a few that no showed us.
Yeah,
I've heard.
Looking at you. Yeah, we had to do a cartoon caricature of Eric Olin for a couple of weeks.
I know. Yeah, I was gonna say Eric never pulled that with you guys.
Yeah.
Once again, you guys are my guys. I think Will told me that story, and then I think he was going to join us again or something. And the first time he showed up, and I was like, again, I'll be damned. Like, holy moly, he's here. Like, trust me, I've had those in my head as I'm sitting here hosting our shows. I'm like, oh my God, he showed up.
Yeah, he didn't show up for us twice, so that was awesome.
Time's a charm, right?
Yeah, we were hoping he didn't show up again because we just wanted to keep this thing going.
Yeah, we had it's the only time James and I planned a podcast where we were just like, we're gonna roast this guy, and then he showed up and it was kind of disappointing. It's like, oh
yeah,
man.
Yeah, I kind of took the air out of our sails there.
Like now we're gonna talk about this.
We got to talk about real stuff like basketball.
As long as you ripped him for it, that's all that matters.
It
was a gentle ribbing. We didn't let that go by.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll cut it off there because I think Matt's running out of tape back in the office. The hamster is exhausted from
the hamster's dead, dude.
I just met you and I take blame, so I'm sorry.
Yeah. But folks, we really enjoy you. Thanks so much, Ryan Tomari, for coming on. And look, if you got any amount of time, just look at his podcast, read their content. It's first class. The graphics, the layout, everything is really good, and they hit the UNM stuff pretty hard. So it's worth the effort to get in there. I think it's only like $1.99 a month, right?
Kid seats are only $5.
Yeah, which Fern Lobo didn't want to pay for your $1.99.
I made that comment to Frank, and I like Fern and Berryman, but I was like, look, you make like triple what I do.
Yeah.
If you guys don't mind,
Columbia House.
Yeah, it's Columbia House. That's pretty good. You get Fast and the Furious and and the 1998 USA Godzilla and the Matrix. I don't know if those
all
were
for
Columbia.
a penny.
Yeah, all for a penny. I don't know if those movies were made by Columbia. That's another thing I do in my spare time is watch B movies. It's like I'm sane because of that. If you guys don't mind me plugging my own stuff, please visit please visit. This is why Nick should host the show. Please visit thepitpressnm.com. We're on Twitter, the artist formerly known as Twitter, X, at the Pit Press NM, Instagram, Facebook, the Pit Press NM. Our YouTube channel is the Pit Press. I don't know who's watching this that might be of that age. Go to our TikTok, which is the Pit Press. But for once, I will not ramble. I was so excited to join you guys. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. And folks, we'll see. Usually we come back from a little break and we wrap it up. We're going to give Matt a break.
We're just going to hit the eject button and go home.
We burned right through Show Killer Matt's lunch hour, so we're just going to wrap it up right here. But thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.